Recently, I was out hunting here in North Carolina about a week ago. Dove hunting season opened. And for me, it's just an opportunity to get out and sit in the woods in a blind for a little bit and just sort of relax and unwind and think about nothing. But it's an interesting situation. So I was in this blind with one of my sons and three other young men. And we'd been there just hanging out and talking and chatting for about 3 or 4 hours. And nobody really knew who I was or what I did. Some of these other young men, and I'm talking about 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old guys that were friends of my son. That we were just hanging out and hunting. Like I said, they just didn't really know who I was or anything. So later on, we all gathered up for lunch. And when it came time for lunch, one of the gentlemen who was overseeing the event asked me if I would pray over the meal, which I was glad to do. So I prayed over the meal. And after I was done, and I was told all this later on, but apparently after I was done praying for the meal, one of the young men that was sitting in the blind where I was, went over and told somebody else who relayed the story to me. He said, "Hey, you didn't tell me he was a preacher." And the guy said, well, why? Why does that matter? And he said, well, I cussed. While we were out there, I cussed, and you didn't tell me. And I cussed in front of the preacher. And the guy he told this to looked at him. And he said, you know what? This is a good time for you to learn a lesson. And this is what you need to understand, and this is what you need to know. You should never say anything to anybody or in front of anybody that you wouldn't want a preacher to hear. And the young man looked at him and he said, that's right. That's true. So that story was relayed to me later on. The guy that had handled it and addressed it with the younger man, he came and he told me what had happened. And he said, I just want you to know you had an impact on somebody today. And I said, I have no idea how I had an impact on anybody today. And he told me the story about how the young man had come to him and confessed that he had cussed in front of the preacher and how he was upset that he didn't let him know. And then the lesson that he had the opportunity to teach him about watching what you say whenever and wherever you are. That you should have, you should have principles and ethics as far as what you're willing to say and not say, no matter who's around. So as I thought about that story later on, it reminded me of this verse that I want to share from you from Psalms chapter 19. And it's one that many of you are going to be very familiar with. But that story, along with this verse, is, I think, a good reminder for us for this week. And this is what the verse says. Psalms 19, verse 14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight. That's basically what the young man learned that day. Don't say anything in front of anybody that you wouldn't want the preacher to say. Or better yet, don't say anything in front of anybody or to anybody that you wouldn't want God to hear you saying. Because here's the facts. He does. He hears all, he knows all, and he sees all. So if we stop and we think about it and we live our life realizing that and being sensitive to it, it'll probably help us all stay out of a little bit of trouble from time to time. It'll probably help us all do a better job of guarding what comes out of our mouth and what we allow ourselves to fill our heart and our soul. So go out this week and don't worry about who you're talking to, because let everything that comes out of your mouth and what goes into your heart be pleasing in his sight. Because he is, as it says, God is our strength and he is our Redeemer. God bless everybody.